Number 63. Come now, Almighty King, help us thy name to sing, help us to praise. Father, all glorious, for all victorious, come and reign over us, ancient of days. O Lord our God, to thee the highest praises thee, hence evermore. Thy sovereign majesty may we in glory sing, and to eternity love and adore. Number 219. 219. Crown him with many crowns, O Lamb upon the throne. Hark how the heavenly anthem drowns all music but its own. Oh, wake my soul and sing of him who died for thee, and hail him as thy matchless King through all eternity. Crown him the Lord of heaven, one with the Father known, and the blessed Spirit through him give from yonder glorious throne. All hail, Redeemer, hail, for thou hast died for me. Thy praise and glory shall not fail throughout eternity. Number 392. 392. If the skies above you are gray, you are things of blue. If your cares and burdens in gray, all the whole day through, there's a silver light that shines in the heavenly land. Look by faith and sin, my friend, trust in his promises grand. Sing and be happy, press on 740. There's a message true and glad for the simple and the sad. Ring it out, ring it out. It will give them courage soon. It will help them to be true. Ring it out, ring it out, ring it out. Merrily ring, sing it away, best divine, sing it today. As the deer and for the water born, so my soul longs after you. My soul thirsts for the living God. Yes, my soul. After the singing of this song, Scott Hawkins will lead us in prayer. 650. How do you explain? How do you describe a love that goes from east to west and from
Lord, we thank you so much for the day you've given us, especially the opportunity to come, sing praises to you, to worship you, to remember the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus and the sacrifice that you made on the cross in order that we can become your children. We thank you so much for that blessing that we have, that we can be your children and be able to spend eternity with you. Pray that you'll be with each and every one of us this day as we worship you, that our hearts will be in tune with the words that come out of it. Singing and praising you from our hearts. Pray that you'll be with each and every one of us as we remember your death, burial, and resurrection of your Son. And as we do so, that we will do so in a manner that will be acceptable to you. And remember that tremendous sacrifice that you made. Pray that you'll be with your church throughout the world, wherever it may be, that are worshiping here today. Thank you so much for our brothers and sisters there, especially the ones that we've had contact with. Pray that you'll be with them and encourage them as they know that at this time we're meeting as well. Pray that you'll be with the works that we do, and pray that they'll be to your benefit, to show the world your love. Pray that you'll be with those who are not able to be here this morning because of their illness, whether it be short term because of surgeries or illnesses that they're trying to overcome, or those who are not able to get out anymore at all and are not able to be out with anybody. We pray that you'll comfort them and encourage them and always be with them. We thank you so much for the many blessings that you've done in healing those that we prayed for. There's so many different people that have better health because of answered prayers. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for Karen putting on Christ in baptism, becoming one of your children. We pray that you'll be with her all the days of her life. Encourage her and lift her up. Guide her in all that she does. Pray that you'll be with each and every one of us as we go our separate ways here each and every day, and that you help us to live a life, to be a light to the community, so that the people around us will see Jesus. Get to know him and be a part of him. Guide us in all that we do. Be with us each and every day.
I will read Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 47. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of the bread, to the prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All the believers were together and everything common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he had need. Every day they continued to be together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved.
Number 302. 302. This morning, as we prepare our minds to take the Lord's Supper, we'll sing the second verse of number 302. In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in boundless fame, His gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones He came to save, till Jesus is all the world to me, my life, my joy, my home. He is my strength from day to day. Without Him I would fall. When I am sad, to Him I go. No other one can cheer me so. When I am sad, He makes me glad. Number 906. Number 906.
Good morning. Oh, it's good to be back home. Trips are fun, but in the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy had it right. There is no place like home, and this is home. And we are glad to be back. Thank you, Scott, for filling in for me while I was gone. I know you heard some good lessons from the pulpit while I was absent, and I will say we did have a good trip. This morning, I want to draw a big contrast, and maybe you have never thought of it quite in these terms, but I want you to see really the difference that is presented between Satan and Jesus. Now you say, well, sure, there's a contrast there. But let's get exactly what I'm talking about. In John 12 and verse 31, Jesus says, now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out. Now he's talking about Satan. Satan is the ruler of this world. Now, a little note you may have not picked up in Scripture, but this is especially true in the historical books and the prophets of the Hebrew Bible. When God holds someone in disdain, many times He will not even use their name.
in talking about one of the kings of Israel, the son of Remaliah. Everybody knew who he was, but the prophet disdained him so much that his name was not even used. The God of this world. That's not a compliment. There's nothing complimentary about it. But then, when we go to John chapter 18 and verse 36, my kingdom is not of this world. So do you see the contrast I'm trying to make? This world, Satan's domain. Jesus' domain is a spiritual one. He wants to elevate us up above and, quite honestly, out of this world. So let's see if we can understand this a little more. In Job chapter 1 and verse 7, the Bible tells us, "And the Lord said to Satan, 'From where do you come?' And so Satan answered the Lord and said, 'From going to and fro in the earth.'" Moving about, doing his thing here on earth, working his evil in the lives of people. 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8 sort of echoes this. "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walks about seeking whom he may devour." So he's working in this world, trying to work his evil, trying to bring people down, trying to circumvent the work of God. So he's out there and about doing his thing. Now, the New Testament has a couple of important things to tell us about Satan's domain, this world. In James 4 and verse 4, we're told, "And do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God?" This world, in the sense of what's going on in this world, and those who are involved in it, become enemies of God. And we see how that works. Sodom and Gomorrah. The northern kingdom of Israel fallen. The southern kingdom of Judah being carried into captivity for 70 years. What's going on in the world, all the way back to the time of Noah and the flood, are things that do not please God. And if we embrace those things, if we take those things in, we make ourselves an enemy of God. 1 John chapter 5 and verse 15, we're told, "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him." That's pretty serious. God is saying we are supposed to be detached, not attracted, not bonded with this world. Well, then that brings up the contrast. What did Jesus come to do? And literally, he came to Satan's domain to destroy Satan's power. 1 John 3 and verse 8, "For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil." He didn't come to just damage Satan. He came to destroy what Satan is doing. And this is very, very important that we understand that. Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 14, we're told that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil. Satan has two real powerful weapons that he uses within his domain. One is sin, the other is death. On the cross, Jesus destroyed sin. In his resurrection from the dead, Jesus destroyed death. Satan's two most potent things were stripped out of his hands, literally, by Jesus coming into his domain and taking those things away. Now, as Paul writes to new Christians in Romans 6 and verse 6, he says, knowing this, that our old man was crucified with him, that the body of sin, and the New King James says, might be done away with. The original King James says, might be destroyed. So Jesus came to defeat Satan's two most powerful weapons. But then, he also came to defeat those things in the lives of people. Not just enough to beat Satan. Jesus came to free people. And this is a term that Paul will use several times in this 6th chapter of the book of Romans. He came to free us. Free us from sin. Free us from the fear of death. Free us from the bonds and shackles that Satan had for us. Free us to be able to live for and serve God. And so in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus told us something really important. In Matthew 6:24, he said, no one can serve two masters. You can't serve Satan in his domain and serve God in Jesus' domain. We've got to make a decision. Now, how do I explain this decision? And since we have a lot of Tennessee fans and a lot of Alabama fans, I'm going to explain it on that basis. That weekend, there's no neutrality. When they play football, you're either a UT fan or you're an Alabama fan. You're not neutral. You're pulling for one or the other. And what we're being told by Jesus is, you must decide. You've got to make up your mind. Who are you going to be pulling for in the life you live? Are you going to be pulling for Satan? Are you rooting for him? Are you encouraging him by the way you live and by the way you conduct yourself? Or are you living for Jesus? And are people seeing that in your life? And that's what is so very, very important in our world today. People need to see Christians not living and serving in Satan's domain, but living and serving in Christ's domain. Matthew 6, verse 19 and then verse 20. Jesus says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Here's the contrast. Up here, down here. Where are your treasures going to be? Because he goes on to say where your treasure is, there is your heart also. So are we thinking and living and driving ourselves in this spiritual domain that Christ wants us to be in? Or are we thinking and living and driving ourselves in Satan's domain? So what comes along then in Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, and says, if then you were raised with Christ, he's talking about baptism here, seek those things which are above. When we come up out of those waters of baptism, we've got to change our thinking. We've got to change our hearts. And we do that by, okay, here's the world. I just washed the effects of the world away. Now, my interest is going above. My interest is spiritual. Then in verse 2, he says, set your mind on things above, not on things of the earth. And again, as we go back to Matthew chapter 6, that was what Jesus was trying to teach his disciples. We have a world full of people that their primary interests are things in this world. That's it. That's all they care about. They're not a whole lot interested in tomorrow, and many of them are definitely not interested in eternity. Remember hearing a story, grandfather was talking to his grandson, and he was in high school, and he said, well, what do you plan to do when you graduate from high school? And he said, go to college. And he said, all right, well, what do you plan to do after you finish college? He said, well, I'm going to go out and get a job, find a wife, and marry her, and we're going to have a family and children together. And he said, okay, well, what are you going to do after that? And he said, well, I'm going to save up money for retirement so we can kind of have it nice when we have time together again once more. And then he said, what's going to happen after that? And he said, well, I guess I get older. And then the grandfather really got down to the important thing. What's going to happen after that? How many of you have thought about what's going to happen after that? Let me word it another way. Where are you going to spend eternity? If everything in your life has been about Satan and this world, guess what? You're going to spend eternity in his domain. But if everything in this life comes to be about Christ and living for him, you can spend eternity in his domain. So again, I go back to my point. We've got to change the heart. We've got to change our thinking. Proverbs 23:7 tells us, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Okay, how do you identify yourself right now, this moment? I'm a part of Christ's kingdom. I'm a part of Satan's kingdom. Important how you identify yourself. What you see in you. But then Solomon also said in Proverbs 4 and verse 23, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Guard it, protect it, hedge it in, take care of it, because your life is built from that. So, if your life builds on, I'm going to Christ, I'm serving him, I'm on the Lord's side, I'm going to do what the Lord wants me to do. Or is your life built on, well, I'm going to do what everybody else in the world does. I'll be honest, folks, it's easy to do what everybody else in the world does. Following the crowd, wow. Any dummy can do that. Any dummy can follow the crowd. Simple. Just get on board and go. But it takes people who have changed their hearts. It takes people who have changed their minds. It takes people who are changing their lives to live for Christ. And it's not always easy. Because we're going against the majority. Now, I will bring out one thing I learned on that trip. I knew it already. Salmon go against the flow. When they're going back to spawn, they don't go down river, they go up river. And when watching these little things try to jump up waterfalls and everything else is a very, very interesting thing indeed. And the way salmon live is a whole lot like Christians need to be living. Satan's domain's just washing down the river, going with the flood. Christ's people are going against the flood. They're going against the common. the ordinary, the usual, because they want to be like Christ. Now, one problem we have today is I'm afraid when a lot of people in the world look at Christians, they're not seeing this contrast. They're not seeing the divide that exists between Christ and Satan. I'm really afraid a lot of people in our world today are not seeing very much difference between themselves and people who call themselves Christians. And we really, really need to change that thinking in the minds of the world. Hear what Jesus said about his apostles and subsequently us. He said in John 17:16, and this is in a prayer, they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. You know what? They really live lives like that. Well, they were out of step with the world, completely. But they were in step with Christ. And that's what matters. And that's what's important. And so the real question is, are you not of this world? Are you like they were supposed to be? Let's think about two passages. Hebrews 11:13. Now he's just talked about several heroes of faith. And he says that these people confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. We even sing this song a lot of times. This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. In fact, when Paul contrasts life on earth in 2 Corinthians 4 to eternity, he compares our life on earth to a tent, a temporary dwelling place, not a permanent thing. And yet, when we think about heaven, we think about a city, something long-lasting, something enduring. But then with that same thought in mind, in 1 Peter 2:11, we're told, Beloved, I beg you, as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts that war against your soul. We're passing through. You know, when Scott, Bill, I, or anybody else goes to Cuba, we know we're not Cuban. We understand that. Americans who travel to other countries in the world, they realize real fast, I'm not of whatever country you're in. We need to realize when we're passing through this world, as Paul says in Philippians 3, our citizenship is in heaven, not here on earth. This place is not permanent. It's temporary. And really, when you begin to compare eternity to a lifetime, there's not a comparison. There's not. Is it worth spending 60, 70, 80 years in rebellion against God and hell for eternity? Or is it better to live for God and live in heaven for eternity? That's what we're talking about. That's the contrast. That's what Jesus wants us to see. It's not just about 60, 70, 80 years of life. It's about eternity. Where do you want to spend eternity? And so as John begins to wind up 1 John, I think he brings this contrast back to us, especially since he's the one who recorded the contrast. In 1 John 4 and verse 5, he says, they are of the world. But then he turns along in verse 6 and says, we are of God. There's your contrast. There's the difference. And so I want to ask you a question today. Which one of those sides are you on? If Christ were to look at you today, would he say, you are of the world? If he would, you need to make some changes really, really fast. If you've never become a Christian, you need to become one. You need to believe with all your heart that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. You need to repent of your sins. You need to confess your faith in Christ, and you need to wash away those sins in the waters of baptism. And you don't need to waste time. You know, when you read the book of Acts, I mean, there were people obeying the gospel in the middle of the night and all different times of day. When they found out they were part of Satan's domain and they were lost because of the world, they wanted to get out of that. They realized the urgency of that. And if you're not a Christian today, I want you to realize the urgency. Because eventually, there aren't going to be any more opportunities to come to us. But then on the other hand, if you once became a Christian and people can't tell any difference between you and the world, you need to do something about that immediately. You need to repent. You need to ask God's forgiveness. You need to make sure you get back on track. There needs to be a distinction. Going back to 1 Peter 1. Verse 14, Peter said, be holy, for I am holy. That was God speaking. That word holy means other, separate, apart. We're not to be part of this world. We're to be a part of Christ. And if you're not a part of Christ right now, please come while we stand.